I test lots of old hardware on this channel. I love doing it just to go back to see how it runs here today in 2019. Recently I've tested the Core 2 Quad and paired it with a modern day graphics card to see how it handles modern day titles, as well as I've done other older graphics cards like the GTX 780 and older Dell Optiplexes. So today in this video I wanted to go back to 2007 and build my dream computer from 2007. In 2007, I built my very first gaming computer from the ground up. I had been PC gaming since 2003, but all I actually did was just put a graphics card in the family computer and played games off of that, like original Call of Duty and things like that. Once in 2007, when I was finally 18 and able to build my own gaming computer, I was able to buy all the parts, my very first credit card, and build that from the ground up. The parts I had was an old AMD Athlon processor. I believe it was either dual core or quad core, one of those. And then for the graphics card, I had a GTX 8600, of which eventually I upgraded to an 8800 GT. I really wished I could have went SLI 8800 Ultras, but with an 18-year-old with a $300 credit limit, SLI 8800s were just out of the question. And still to this day, I didn't really find it in my budget for this video to do the SLI 8800 Ultras. So for this video, I have the 8800 GTS, which has 512 megabytes of VRAM, and it was manufactured by BFG Tech, which is a company that no longer makes graphics cards, and as far as I know, don't even exist anymore. The graphics card I had in my gaming computer in 2007 was the 8800 GT from EVGA, and I don't even know if I had the 512 megabyte version. So the upgrades I went with on this computer for this video, I now have 8 gigabytes of RAM, where I probably went with either 2 or 4 when I was growing up in 2007. And then obviously now I have the Core 2 Quad Q6600, which also came out in 2007 at the astronomical price of over $800. And that was eventually lowered down to about $500 soon after its launch. That high price tag on the Q6600 did prove to be worth the price, as some people still find themselves using the Core 2 Quad Q6600 here today in 2019. Depending on the applications, Core 2 Quad is a great little processor that you can pick up for about 10 bucks on eBay and can handle most titles and games and can do some other odd type of computing without any issues. You're just going to be missing lots of certain CPU instructions that you're going to need. For example, the Apex Legends game would not be able to run on this computer. So since in 2007, I primarily had my computer only for gaming. We're going to be testing games, not games from 2019, since we've already done that in a previous video. We're going to be playing the games that I played back in 2007 and a little bit after. Since I didn't have something like MSI Afterburner, I think I had Fraps, but I never really cared too much about frames per second. It wasn't something I was really concerned about or even knew too much about or the importance of it. When I bought monitors, I probably didn't look at refresh rates and response times. The monitor I have here today is an old HP monitor that I have from work. Now I had to use this one because this computer, once I installed the drivers for the 8800, this would not work on my modern day MSI optics monitor that I test most of my computers with. So I did have to switch the monitor out for this video. This is not a gaming monitor, but it will do the tricks just to give us an idea on what kind of performance we'd be getting if I had this dream computer from 2007. As you can see, I do have the 8800 GTS in here with the vertical mounting. I did not do that in 2007. Obviously, that wasn't really a thing back in the day. The case I had back in 2007 was an Antec 900, which is one of the most popular cases to ever be released. I loved that case. I couldn't really find it in my budget for this video to pick that up, so I left it in this Fantex P600S, a case from this year 2019 that I used for my Core 2 Quad video that I did with OzTalks Hardware and Definitely Tech. As you can see, I have the 8 gigabytes of HyperX DDR2 RAM. I have this old DVD optical drive, which still uses the old IDE ribbon cables. Love that these ribbon cables are no longer a thing. This thing is just so ugly. And then behind this Fantex cooler is our Core 2 Quad Q6600, which I do have the Q6600 overclocked to 3.55 gigahertz. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into some games. The games I'm going to be testing for you are some of the popular games that I played back in the day when I had my first gaming computer. First off, we're going to be playing Half-Life 2. Looking at the settings I have for Half-Life 2, I'm playing at the resolution of 1024 by 768. And now for the detail quality, I have high model detail, texture detail. They're all on the highest setting with anisotropic filtering at 4x and 2x MSAA anti-aliasing and bloom effect turned on when available with high dynamic range. All right, jumping into the game, you would be getting 299 FPS in Half-Life 2 with this configuration. Source Engine was one of the best engines ever created, and it still looks great today. They still use it in modern games that we play today, like Counter-Strike Global Offensive. The Source Engine was way ahead of its time. And we're dipping down into like the 260, 270 in FPS, but jumping right back up to the 300 FPS mark. The frame times are absolutely excellent, around 3 milliseconds for frame times. Now, the GPU, which is at a vertical mount, is still an open air case, and the GPU temperature is at 74 degrees Celsius right now, jumping up like 75 right there, and it's at 70% usage right now. The CPU is at 50 degrees Celsius, and it is around 64% usage right now. And this game is using about 3 gigabytes of memory. All right, so I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit and check to see if we can get into some action and see if that at all affects the frame rates that we're getting in the Half-Life 2. And then we'll be moving on to the few other games I'll be testing, which I have some of the games I played back in the day. We have Brothers in Arms Road to Hill 30. This came out in 2005. Far Cry 2, I came out in around 2008. We have Company of Heroes, and this came out around 2006. Now, I did have Crysis to test, but Crysis just does not work at all on Windows 10. You have to do some real tampering with the system to get the original Crysis to work. So I am not going to be testing it in this video. I didn't really want to sacrifice some things or put my computer at risk just to get Crysis running. So unfortunately, we are going to just skip Crysis. Obviously, this computer would have been the top computer of its time. So this would have been the computer you would want to go with if you wanted to play Crysis. So yes, this computer can run Crysis because I did do it back in the day. All right, so I've gotten into the point of the game where we got some pretty good action here. So we're going to see how that affects the FPS. So right here, we're around 280 to 290 FPS. Yep. And it dropped down to 248 there with some explosions, so not too bad. Man, this Source Engine was so awesome back in the day. It still is awesome, just like all the physics. They just really changed gaming with the physics in this Source Engine. And the fact that some games still use it today and it still looks so incredible. Source Engine was so amazing. Alright, so yes, Half-Life 2 is awesome even on this older hardware. 300 FPS. Everything looks awesome, and what a great game. I'm having so much fun playing this again. I almost don't want to stop playing it and start testing the other games. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and start testing the next couple games and see how they perform. but I'm probably gonna play this for a little bit before I pick up those games again. Alright, so now I am going to be playing Far Cry 2. We got the 1024 by 768 resolution, very high settings across the board, and we got refresh rate is locked at 60. Won't let me pick that. It's probably due to the monitor being a 60 hertz refresh rate monitor. Hopefully that doesn't lock the frame rates. We are currently getting 400 FPS in the menus. Other than that, anti-aliasing is at 4x, DirectX 10 is enabled, and HDR and Bloom are also enabled. So we're going to go ahead and get in this game and see how it's performing. So in my little hut here, I am at about 100 FPS, and I can tell you right now that Far Cry 2 still looks absolutely stunning. For its time, it was an amazing looking game. I can't say enough about the graphics. You can just see what they did here. Like, got the fire spreading. Like, this fire will keep on burning for a long time, and you can see the frame rates have dropped down into the 50s and the 60s. And you see it's now spreading all the way down here into the trees and into this hut now. It just keeps on spreading. So Far Cry did an amazing job with its fire technology. Just the graphics, like I said, are just way ahead of its time. And here it just keeps on going. So, and it's got into the trees now. So absolutely stunning. Amazing graphics and just great effects. Ubisoft and the Cry engine, just amazing stuff that they're doing. As we get away from the fire, back up into the 80s and 90s, dipping back down to the 60s. So the frame time's not so great, about 15 to 16 milliseconds right now. Well, we're going to go ahead and get into some action and see what that is like. Far Cry 2 was probably the first Far Cry game to put you into a specific setting, as this took you to Africa, where you'll be able to see like the African safari and with all the animals. First time Far Cry really took an emphasis on animals and its landscape to really drive home the story and how the game played. So it was really interesting for them to actually have been doing that as far back as 2008 with Far Cry 2. Far Cry 1 was a very different game, where it was very supernatural, but that too was ahead of its time. If I still had Far Cry 1, I would be testing that one instead of this game, but I don't have it anymore. I don't know what I did with it, but Far Cry also was a great game, but it had a very supernaturalness where you ended up fighting like genetically modified mutants. It was an interesting experience for Far Cry. Obviously, they do have some supernatural and some of the modern day stuff, but it's usually drug related. So Far Cry 1 was very different in that respect. So we're here near a body of water. We got some nice reflections going on. Some ripples and popping when you shoot it. So, and the FPS is around 60, 66 here at the highest. This is definitely playable. The frame times, as I said, they're not good. So one of the reasons why I never finished this game was just the navigation was so terrible. I got really far into this game, but like every other open world game, it just got tiring just looking to where to go and traveling for miles and miles and miles for hours on end, and it seems like you just were not getting anywhere. And after a while, it just gets kind of old traveling and not doing anything in between missions. Like, it's almost a fake way of giving you more playtime. Alright guys, I think that's going to cut it up for Far Cry 5. Obviously playable performance, we've seen FPS up in the 100s, but really only when you're in like brownout homes and nothing really going on. That's when you kind of see the FPS go up there. But once you start getting out in this lush African wilderness and start seeing some action, it does drop down to about 60 FPS, which is still playable, but you also have to deal with really bad frame times. Right now you'll see here I'm getting about 19 and it went all the way up to 60 millisecond frame times there, so you do have to worry about the frame times. Just drop down into the 40s and the FPS. So anyway, this is a playable experience on the 8800 with the Core 2 quad, with the Core 2 quad overclocked to 3.55 gigahertz. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next game. So now we are on to Brothers in Arms. Look at that. That is back when they would only charge $30 for a brand new game. Now, Brothers in Arms is probably one of my favorite games back in the day. This came out, I believe, in 2005. Yes, 2005 from Gearbox and Ubisoft, the makers of Borderlands. And I loved this series. They made several of these games. They had an expansion pack called Earned in Blood, and then they had Hell's Highway, which was the last one they made. And I loved the Brothers in Arms series. It was a World War II first-person shooter, very tactical. You could tell your comrades how and where to go. And the cool part about Brothers in Arms is it's based off of real people. Every character you play as and every character in the game, they're real people that actually fought in these battles. And you're playing as Sergeant Matt Baker here on the cover, and everyone in your squad is his real squad mates that he commanded during the battles that you fight in this game. And moving on into Hell's Highway, which obviously we know that was Operation Market Garden. I missed this series. I don't need them to bring it back to where they're following another battle with Matt Baker, although I would like to see a remastered version of this game because this game's absolutely amazing. But if they could do another, like a sequel, but maybe like Vietnam War with new characters, that would be pretty cool to see. Other than that, I've been pestering Gearbox on Twitter to remake this game, or remaster it, or come out with some type of sequel. If you've never played Brothers in Arms, I highly recommend it if you're into the tactical World War II shooters, because this one was absolutely amazing and one of my favorite games to have ever come out. Moving on into the game, let's go over the options I have here. I have our resolution also at 1024 by 768. 8 anisotropic filtering with VSync turned off. Shadows we have on projected. Reflections are true. Decal limit, let's jump that up to high. Grass detail is on high, and high dynamic range and soft lighting is on. Texture detail is also on high. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the game and see what kind of performance we get here. To put into perspective how this game was, how much effort they put into making sure you had an authentic experience with this game. This game was endorsed by the Veterans of Foreign Wars and endorsed by the Patton Museum Foundation. And they had a historian and actual military personnel to make sure that they not only were using proper tactics, but also just stayed true to the story and honored the people that they're portraying in this game. Alright, so we're getting over 200 FPS. We're going to back off and watch this explosion and see what the explosion does to our frame. It dropped kind of down to 180s. So 8800 handling this game pretty well. And one interesting thing about this game is they didn't really hold back on the gore. Very gory and just true to life war game. And that's one of the things I really respected about it. Here you can see I'm telling my squad mate to move up and get behind this cover. think we're meeting up with some squad mates. So 180 FPS here, and just gonna hang out, talk to my teammates. I think that's gonna wrap up Brothers in Arms here. So great game, one of my favorites, as I've said many times in this game. If you like what you see, I highly recommend you try it. I see it on sale for like $2 on Uplay every once in a while. So you give it a chance. Brothers in Arms Hell's Highway is going to have even better graphics than this. They had even different elements that they added to the game where just like your cover could be destroyed. So very interesting game, especially if you like the tactical games and if you like true to life stories based off of real people, real battles. So excellent game for you guys to go ahead and try. So like I said, about $2.50 on Uplay when it's on sale. So definitely give it a try if you like it. Try to hit up Gearbox and Ubisoft on Twitter and see if they'll remaster that game, because it's been something I've been begging for a long time. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to Company of Heroes. We're going to go ahead and get started into Company of Heroes. This is a real-time strategy game that came out in 2006, one of my favorite real-time strategy games. I was very picky about the real-time strategy games that I did play. They had to have some kind of, they had to have a really good user interface or UI for me to play them. So the games I liked were Company of Heroes. I liked a little bit of StarCraft, Age of Empires, and Empire Earth 2 were some of my favorite games in the real-time strategy realm. So Company of Heroes being one of my favorites. This came out in 2006. We're going to go ahead and jump into this. This was also very graphically demanding of its time. It had destructible environments. So really cool game for its time. It was a demanding game of its time, and we have it at 1080p resolution and high settings, ultra settings across the board. And yeah, with real-time strategy game, you really don't need to worry about frames per second. As long as you have 30 FPS, that's playable enough for a real-time strategy. And I even think this game gets locked at 50 frames per second, because I haven't seen it go any higher than that. So we're going to go ahead and get into the game to show you how this plays. Before I do though, I'm just really noticing here how loud this 8800 GTS is. So I got my sound meter here, and we're going to go ahead and see what that's getting. .48 and 49 decibels, just kind of at around my distance from the computer. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it up to the card and see what kind of decibels we're getting here. When you're close up to the card, it's more like 56 decibels or dBA. So we're going to go ahead, continue playing on with this game. But yeah, just wanted to let you know the 8800 was a loud card. It could be that it's really dusty. I probably need to repaste it and clean it out. But just noticing right now how loud it is. But it does need a nice dusting and probably does need some nice thermal paste. Right now the GPU is at 74 degrees Celsius with the CPU at 45. All right, so here we're playing Company of Heroes and just moving our squad up into this part here so we can blow that up. If you see him Saving Private Ryan, that's pretty much our mission right now. And just get them, hopefully they don't get mowed down by the MG42s. Now we need to get a whole new squad up there. They just need as many people up there, and then we're going to eventually need to get some engineers. All right, so we got enough soldiers over to the shingle, so now we're going to go ahead and get these engineers moved up. Get them moving up to this area here. Keep moving, keep moving. Get these guys all moved up. And like I said, we're getting about 50 FPS right here. Only using about 3 gigs of RAM. I'm going to tell my engineers to throw a satchel charge up in here, just to get rid of this nuisance of an MG42. And yep, they're throwing the satchel charge. Got a counter here of a 2, 1, and boom. This game, for its time, this game looks incredible. I can still play this game and not be wishing for better graphics. So really impressed with the game's graphics and how well they've held up over time. Just waiting for that satchel charge to be ready, and then we're going to blow up this bunker here, which is our main mission. And there it goes. Boom. And 50 FPS still. Frame time's not so great, but like I said, it's not that important to have that competitive edge with frames per second in a real-time strategy game. As long as you're getting at least 30 FPS, you'll be fine. And as I said earlier, I'm pretty sure this game locks it at 50 FPS. Yeah, this game is gory. Watch this. Yeah. So as you can see, Company of Heroes looks amazing. Another game that looks great for its time. It was demanded really good hardware on its time. Really well optimized because, as I said, this game looks really, really good with the destructible environments, everything, and it was running on that 8800 GTS and the Core 2 Quad. So this looks absolutely stunning, locked at 50 frames per second. Nothing I could do about that. That's just part of the game. We're victorious, but that's going to wrap it up for the gameplay. So let's bring it up top and talk about this system a little bit. Alright guys, this was my dream computer of 2007. Obviously the case is out of place since it's a case from 2019. I really would have loved if I could get my hands on an Antec 900 like I had back in the day. I did have an Antec 900, but it had it was an Athlon, either a dual core or quad core processor, I can't remember. And I did have an 8800 eventually, and I loved that card. I felt so elite having an 8800. Sean, the other guy on the channel, I actually traded in my 8600 and I think $50 to get an 8800 back in the day. So now I went and got this 8800 on eBay for $17, and I'm glad it's working. I think I'm going to do a teardown later on and see how VRMs and everything compares to PCB on a graphics card today. So that's going to be an interesting video. If you want to see that, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss when that gets uploaded. As I said, it's a loud card. It has that blower style cooler. Could have needed some better thermal paste, but I guess we'll see that when we do the teardown. Core 2 Quad boosted up to 3.55 gigahertz. Excellent performer with these older titles. And as you saw in my Core 2 Quad video before, that was handling modern day titles as well when it was paired with the R9 Fury. I did show you some pretty demanding titles, Far Cry 2 probably being the most demanding of them all. I wish, like I said, I wish I could have shown you Crysis, but it was going to be too much of a hassle and too much of a risk to do so. So I hope you guys forgive me for not showing you Crysis. Like I said, I do have them, it just they don't run on Windows 10 without some real finagling. But Company of Heroes and Far Cry 2 are definitely going to be some demanding titles for you guys to see. Far Cry 2 came out about 2 years after the 8800 did, and it handled it pretty well. Just like I said, the frame times were a little bit off. Half-Life 2 was awesome going back into that game. Brothers in Arms, like I said, is one of my favorite games of all time. So I'm almost thinking I might just keep this system together here for a little bit and play through those games. Just try to beat them again. It's been a while since I played them. I love those games quite a bit. So let me know down in the comments if you played any one of these games and how you felt about them. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on my favorite games back in the day. Besides Crysis, obviously, tell me if there were any games you wished I would have tested on this computer. This is my dream computer from 2007. If I had a motherboard that supported SLI, I probably would have picked up another 8800 and did an SLI for this as well. Because SLI back in the day with the 8800 was actually supported way more than it is today. A lot more titles did support the SLI on the 8800s. It's great looking back at this older hardware because the 8800 specifically, that really set a high standard, and that's when graphics card technology really started to just start boosting it. Every year they started releasing a new graphics card, improving on the last one. And if you think about it, when this graphics card came out in 2007 and now we're up to 2019, 12 years later, now we're getting ray tracing, real-time ray tracing. This is just really incredible what the graphics card technology has become ever since this 8800 came out. And it was this card that really just lit a match under the graphics card providers like NVIDIA and AMD. This system with a quad-core processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM, this is really just probably an overkill system of its time. It really truly would have been an overkill system if I was able to get the SLI going for you. I just didn't really have it in my budget to spring on an SLI motherboard. Thought this one would be good enough for you guys. 8800 was able to handle these games very well. Maybe in the future I'll revisit this and get my hands on an SLI motherboard and get some 8800s or maybe a 9800 and do some SLI and see how they handle maybe even more future games that came out a little bit further off. See about when these cards started falling off the wayside of relevancy. Because as I said, graphics card technology really evolved with all the new game technology, graphics technology that started to release. So these cards actually didn't have the lifespan that we had with like a GTX 1080 is going to have a great lifespan. 2080 Ti is going to have a really long lifespan. These 8800s, because of the graphics card technology evolving, they didn't really last that long. So I think that's going to wrap up this video, guys. Let me know down in the comments what you think of all this older hardware that I keep revisiting. If there's other old hardware that you'd like me to look into to see how either it runs in 2019 or take a look at it, see what it was doing back in the day. If there's older cards, want me to take a look at the Voodoo graphics card and try to play Quake 2, I could do that for you guys if it's within the budget. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Any ideas for future videos that you want to see from us? We have some very special videos coming up in the future with older hardware, but also some new stuff too. So make sure you subscribe so you can get your hands on and see that content as soon as it's released. All right, as I said, that's going to wrap up this video. So if you liked it, give it a like. If you want to see more from us, hit that subscribe button and the bell, and we'll see you guys in the next video.